Do you throw things at me? So yeah, I thought we'd sort of start the year off with a bit of a bang, and we've got Bill Sturgeon on the line, and oh no, wait, it's Taylor Otwell. And yeah, so here he is, you can see us. So yeah, a bit of a clap for Taylor Otwell, right? And also a bit of a special thank you to him as well. It's 1:30 a.m. I believe there. So,
yep.
Yeah, a little bit early, a little bit late rather, but should be alright. So how this is sort of going to work, I guess, is I'll sort of kick us off. I've jotted down some little questions and things I want to know more so than anyone else. And then when I'm done, I'll just sort of throw it out to you guys. You can come up and we can put him on the hot seat. So really original, Taylor. Where'd you grow up?
I actually.
Tell me.
I actually grew up 30 minutes from here in a town called Hot Springs.
Nice. I grew up about 300 meters or 300 yards or whatever from where I live now, so that's okay. As I understand, at least, you weren't a developer when you first left school. What did you think you were going to be? What did you think you were going to be when you first left? How did it change?
I first thought I was going to be more like a kind of like a computer network person, like more a computer hardware and networking person. And the only reason I became a programmer is because I got an offer from a trucking company, and they actually offered to train me to program for 6 months. So, like the first 6 months I was on the job was actually just all training, and I didn't actually do any real application coding until I went through that whole training program. So I sort of got lucky in that regard, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have ever gotten started programming. I would have done something else.
Can you drive a truck?
No, I can't drive a big truck, but yeah, a lot of my first programming was all trucking related.
Okay, cool. Something that I always yap on about whenever I do a little sort of Laracon spiel is how I do lots of things outside of the computer. So when it's not sort of Monday to Friday,
yeah,
avoid it. I had a little sort of hypothetical question, but I would like you to answer. If you weren't allowed to, if I got your laptop and smashed it, and you weren't ever allowed to buy another one, and you could do anything related to IT, what would you do now?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I would probably like mow lawns or something. Gosh, I don't know.
Like clipping trees or something. Something that someone your height would actually excel at. For those of you who don't know, I'm pretty tall, and Taylor is about 4 inches on me or 3 inches on me or something. So he's a pretty tall dude. All right. Enough of that junk. I wanted to get into a bit of coding stuff because that's why everyone's here. But I thought I'd start off a little bit more relaxed. Something that I've always wanted to know, being a developer, you're typically a mathematically minded person. But something Laravel excels in that a lot of other people don't, I guess, is there's a certain art to it. And when you look at the source code, you can see the art coming through and the creativity coming through, and it's a very unique sort of a thing. What inspires you? How do you do that? Coffee?
Well, I don't drink coffee, but I sort of just try to make things as absolutely simple as I can, and to read as expressive as I can. So a lot of times that means trying to make the code read pretty much like plain English, like redirect to or session put or something like that. Because I just kind of like things extremely, extremely simple, and not just coding, but just like just like that minimalism kind of appeals to me as something attractive. So that's kind of always the ideal I'm aiming for, and a lot of other people have kind of like that too. I think it's kind of a breath of fresh air from, programming can be really complicated. So having Laravel be as simple as possible is really refreshing for people.
For sure. So you've kind of walked me into my next question. I had two sort of questions. The first was, obviously you're a perfectionist or you've got OCD or something like that, and I admire that. I wish I had it to the same extent. Um, how does so like when we're talking about say Laravel 1 to 3, you rewrote how many months was it between Laravel 1 and 3? I should know this. I should have done my research.
Gosh, it was probably only like a year. It was probably only about a year from the very first release all the way to the third release.
When you
Really fast.
Yeah, when you rewrite something so often, how does that process work in your mind? Is it that you feel you write it up and it feels great, this and that, and then all of a sudden you go, I could do it better, and I could just patch that in, or you just sort of, for lack of a better term, get the shits with it and want to rewrite it from scratch? Like how does that work in your mind? And I can see the same sort of traits coming through with Laravel 5. Once you've freed yourself from that 4.3 name, you've sort of just adding things, taking things out, which is good because you're finding the best way. But yeah, is there anything you can walk us through with that, or is there anything to take out of that could be valuable to someone?
A lot of in the early days of Laravel, like a lot of the users were, they were kind of early adopters, so to speak, and they were fine with things evolving really rapidly because everyone was excited to have this new framework, and it was kind of like, yay, let's add this and change this and blah blah blah. No one really cared that it was breaking backwards compatibility. One, because not many people had written large apps on Laravel at that time. It was mainly people just getting started. And then, but as more people have adopted the framework, we've kind of had to scale that back so that, obviously we can't break things every 2 months like we used to. So now I think it's going to be, it's been almost a year and a half since Laravel 4 came out, when Laravel 5 comes out. So, the breaks are kind of getting longer because we can't really move that quickly. But and even with Laravel 5, there's not a lot of real breaking changes in the framework itself. It's more how the app is structured by default, and kind of the way the folders are laid out in terms of it's namespace under PSR4 and all that jazz. So
my sort of judgment of how you've come across with Laravel 5 has been you've had this sort of war in your mind where it's sort of simplicity versus architecture.
Yeah.
You could sort of put it that way.
Yeah.
Is that sort of been one of your largest struggles with Laravel 5, sort of reworking it to have that same sort of, the same simple feel and the, forgive me for saying, facades that everyone seems to be beautiful? Yeah. What are your thoughts? Do you think that's has that been a challenge?
Yeah, it is a challenge, and it's always hard to know kind of how much weight to give certain things because people can be like the internet can really distort the opinions of what people want. So you could have 2 or 3 people on Twitter that are all about one certain idea, and because they're very vocal, it feels like you have like a whole army of people demanding something when that really may not be the case. And the people who want this other thing or just happen to be quieter. So a lot of times, with people, especially that are more like vocal about wanting like an absolutely like pure architecture and wanting things just right, they tend to be more of the vocal crowd, obviously, and the people that kind of like things simple, eloquent models and facades and all that, they're not really, like warring on Twitter for that. So it is always a fine line, and with Laravel 5, it was kind of walking that tightrope where we still have eloquent models and we even still have facades, but things are set up a little differently for a more robust application architecture out of the box. And so that was, trying to kind of balance things to where I feel like Laravel 4 was, it didn't really scale in terms of the architecture you were getting by default, and you kind of had to rearrange things if your app got pretty big. So I think Laravel 5 is a little better in that regard, but it still maintains a lot of the really convenient features. Like, for example, you can do the form requests, which are basically objects that you put your validation rules on and are type pended in your controller methods, and that's kind of like the more robust approach to validation. Or you can just use the new validates request trait and say this validate from your controller, which is kind of more the kind of classic Laravel speed fast way to do things. And you can kind of pick one or the other, so you don't have to use exclusively either one, but you can kind of use whatever's best for your situation.
Yeah. Are you giving too many options possibly? Is that down there?
Yeah, it's always a concern. Like even with like, for example, to continue with the validation example, I have an app in Laravel 5 that I've been working on, and sometimes I use the form request. Like I think I used it 2 or 3 times, and then the rest of the time, just for simple stuff, I use the validates request trait, where I use the form request for the more complicated examples. So it's not like you have to even pick one or the other, as much as just deciding what you need for this situation. And it's kind of
As you were, sorry.
It's kind of nice to have, a really simple, fast way to do something, and then also to be able to scale out to something more advanced if you need it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I was just going to say it's very easy to over architect something.
Yeah.
I remember when you were first writing Laravel hidden under the Illuminate namespace, I was getting into the whole testing thing, and I over tested things, and it actually made it worse than just. And it took longer, and I'm not saying testing's bad, so don't persecute me, people, but it's about finding that balance. An imperfect shipped product is better than a perfect product that you haven't shipped, I guess. So it's about finding that balance. Okay, so I've sort of deviated from where I was. I had a little flow for this, but I've sort of deviated because you've walked me in a really cool direction. So I might keep going down here. Now, actually, I did want to know, and I've sort of hinted at this and not really asked it because I thought it was too much of a dick question, but when you look through those comments in Laravel and you have the 3 lines, and each line gets smaller and smaller, and they're very equal in the length they get smaller. Bullshit aside, how long has it taken you for the longest one? Have you spent an hour trying to get those comments right? Have you spent half an hour trying to get the comment right? Because I know some of them have been worded. They wouldn't have been your first suggestion.
No, those only take about like 5 or 10 seconds for me to do. I'm really fast at those.
Okay, as I'm just going to go back to these guys here. I think you can see them on your end, I hope. Who knows where the name Laravel came from, by any chance? Right, okay.
Narnia?
Yeah, Taylor, tell us.
Laravel was, mainly it's made up, just off the top of my head because I thought it sounded kind of cool. But also it rhymes with this thing called Care Paravel, which is in the Narnia books, which we had read at the time, in my family and stuff. So that's kind of where the rhyme came from, but mainly I just thought it sounded cool. It doesn't really have like a deeper meaning or anything.
It was one of those things that sort of stood out to me because when I was at school, we did a lot of that C.S. Lewis stuff, a lot of the Narnia series, and I actually recognized it being similar until you said it.
That's funny.
But I would have felt like a smartass had I done that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what else have I got here? I guess this comes from responsibility, which you sort of touched on before about the slow release cycle. Have you? When you changed from Laravel 4.0 to 4.1, when I was doing some work back for Carlos, that really affected me because we overrode the request stuff and you subbed that out and this and that. What sort of responsibility, which is fine, by the way, I'm not having a dig at you, what sort of responsibility do you find you have now that you know you've got huge corporations using your software? Do you have an obligation, I guess, don't you, to maintain that backwards compatibility and
yeah.
I guess that it's kind of tricky because it's hard to advance and still maintain that backwards compatibility.
Yeah. There are times when even in Laravel 5 we didn't we didn't do certain things that would have broken things in a major way. So, for example, like we have the route middlewares in Laravel 5, which let you kind of neatly build these filters on top of your routes, but we didn't remove the Laravel 4 route filters because it would have been just like too jarring to have to totally redo all your filters. And the same way with basically how controllers and routes work, like everything pretty much works the same. It's just kind of in a different spot and a different location. Um, but yeah, I mean, there are definitely times when even with Laravel 5, I said like that would be too big of a breaking change to introduce, even though it was a major version. So we do still kind of you know consider all the changes we've made in light of how big of an impact it's going to be. Even though it's a major version, because there are so many people using it, and it'd be a total pain to have to basically rewrite all your code. We mainly just want people to be able to move their code over into this into the new structure and have things pretty much still work the same.
Are you still anticipating or even looking forward to having some sort of a legacy package to help with that backwards compatibility, or is that 5.0 allowed you to just basically write an upgrade guide, or even like Matt has, and just accept that people will have to do a little bit of work, maybe an hour or two, maybe a day's work on a larger app.
Yeah.
Or is it going to be drop in, pull in Laravel legacy, and you're done?
I think it's more like Matt's upgrade where it's probably going to take a couple hours for most people, especially once we like Matt's upgrade guide. I was actually in contact with him while he was writing that, and we're actually going to flesh that out more, and basically that's going to serve as the basis for like an official upgrade guide once we cover even more edge cases and stuff in terms of what you have to convert. But I mean, it was a pretty good start, and yeah, if your app's fairly large, maybe it takes you a day, but that's kind of like the goal is to not take any longer than 1 day to upgrade, which is kind of nice. If you only have to upgrade every year and a half like that and it takes 1 day, that's not too bad. But and also a part of that is working with package developers to get their packages compatible with Laravel 5, which I want to do more of in the next couple weeks in terms of reaching out to people and saying, what do you need? Are you confused about anything, or do you need any help getting your package ready? Just so I can make sure that the most popular packages, especially, are ready to go for when Laravel 5 is released.
No, that's fair enough. Because like I was saying, you muddled up my order. I had a nice little flow here, but I know that you taking a step back before Laravel and all that sort of stuff. And this is probably a one-liner answer, but why you were writing in a lot of C#, was it?
Yeah, C# and VB.NET.
Sure. So why PHP?
It was just so easy to get started, really, compared to .NET, which is a little bit more work to host, or at least it was back then. It may not be now, but back then it was just so much easier to throw some PHP files up on the server and test out ideas rather than have this whole .NET hosting environment. So just simplicity, really.
And then you moved into PHP, and you obviously didn't have Laravel.
Right. Yeah, I was using CodeIgniter at first, and that was like the best thing I'd ever seen. Like in the PHP world, I was just like so happy because before that I was just writing kind of like my own scripts or whatever, and I was kind of looking for something like I had ASP.NET MVC in .NET, and I was kind of looking for like a web framework in PHP, and most of them were too complicated for what I wanted to do, and I couldn't figure out how to log people in and just do basic stuff. So CodeIgniter was kind of nice in that regard.
Yeah. So did you? I guess before you sort of gave up with it, I think from an earlier interview, I remember you saying it was you just had so much you wanted to change that it wasn't feasible to sort of work with the core.
Yeah.
Did you have any other ambitions like package development for CodeIgniter or anything like that, or was it just your own internal sort of struggles and you sort of parted ways and did your own thing?
No, I did try to make it like work with CodeIgniter, and I was trying to figure out like maybe I could just build kind of like an add-on to CodeIgniter that actually like customized things and made it how I wanted it to be, and I could release that actually like as a package. But it wasn't really possible with the way CodeIgniter was built. I mean, I guess I could have made changes to CodeIgniter internally first, like through pull requests, but like the first thing I did, actually, the first package I released for CodeIgniter was the IOC container, which is basically still the same IOC container that's in Laravel. It hasn't changed at all, really, since the one I released for CodeIgniter, and that was in like 2010. And that was the first IOC container I had seen in PHP that had like the auto resolving reflection stuff and all that, which is all stuff I brought from .NET basically. So I released that for CodeIgniter, and then I kind of figured out like I wasn't going to be able to do the CodeIgniter kind of add-on very cleanly. So that's when I kind of started tinkering with Laravel.
Yep, very good. So we're coming to the tail end of it as far as what I've got to ask, but all this buzz around PHP 6 or 7 or whatever you want to call it, let's call it 20. PHP 20. If you were writing PHP 20, I guess how would you improve on what we've currently got? So the things that stand out to me that most of these RFCs that I've seen come out would be return types, things like strong type hinting. I really like that, or at least as an option.
Yeah.
I really like return types. That's probably one of the most, the ones I want to see the most. Even things like named parameters that you've seen pop up every now and then. What would you improve on what's available? Coming from a background of other languages, I guess.
Well, the thing I found I want the most usually is the method overloading, but I doubt it would ever be possible with PHP. But basically, where I can define the same method name but with different signatures, and that however I call it is the one that it calls basically. So if I have like a do something method, and it takes a date time and one, and then you can also pass it a string maybe. It calls the appropriate one based on what's type pinted. So I doubt that will ever make it into PHP, but I have wanted that probably more than any other feature from another language.
There's no way in hell that would get past the internals. But it sounds pretty cool. Is that just more for an expressive syntax?
Yeah, it lets you have a more expressive syntax so that, and it also just cleans up your code because, like in current PHP, like you can obviously do that. You can let a method receive either a date time or a string, but you kind of have to do like the if checks within the method itself to know like what you're actually working with. Whereas that kind of cleans up some boilerplate if it's already sorted out for you.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. So just a couple more questions. One was back on Laravel. A criticism that I've seen a lot on Twitter is, and when I say a lot, like you said, it's the 3 or 4 people that just repeatedly say it, like Professor Moore and all that. Poor Jones. But he's got to say, yeah, anyway, you get criticism for being the head honcho or the leader or the one-man show, this and that. That, for me, doesn't seem an issue when you have such a following, because say you were to get hit by a bus or some mad bloke came and shot you or something awful, Laravel, I guess, will go on in some way, shape or form, but I guess what I'm getting at is the one-man show a bad thing in your, I mean, obviously you don't think it is, but why? What's the advantages of having effectively a one-man show leading the direction? Is that better than 3 heads talking that are going in, other ways, or just sort of a justification, I guess. So yeah.
I don't know if it's better, but you at least, decisions get made a lot faster for better or worse. Whereas with with other frameworks that don't really have that luxury, there's a lot more debate it seems that happens like internally, and it takes a lot longer for them to reach a compromise where I can kind of make those decisions and act on them a lot faster. So it just saves a lot of time. I mean, there is probably some benefit to having that debate, but there's also the benefit of kind of moving faster. So it's kind of nice, really, because you still try to listen to the community, obviously, and like even with Laravel 5, like I'd taken out the PHP artisan serve command because I was like, we have Homestead, why would you ever use serve? But a lot of people still really like that, and I actually didn't realize how many people were using that. I kind of thought, well, like, and it made sense when we didn't have something really nice and easy like Homestead, but now it was kind of, it wasn't needed. But since I saw the community liked it so much, I actually just went ahead and added it back in, and I didn't have to have some big debate with a committee on whether I could do that. I just did it, in like 5 or 10 minutes. So that's kind of nice.
So you've led me into my next one, which is on community. I'm involved in a few communities, I guess, and there's something that, and it's always stood out, especially when Laravel was a lot newer. You had there's a certain sense of community that I don't see in a lot of other ones. So you'll be on IRC and someone will ask a question and there will be 3 or 4 answers like that, and it comes back. And I know some people in this room certainly use and obviously help people with this. I guess how do you how do you inspire a community like that? How do you grow a community? Is it something that's self-going? But if it is, why does the Laravel one at least appear to me to seem different and better?
I think one thing at the beginning that was really nice was I was very personally hands-on with the community. So I was in the forum every day. I was in IRC answering questions, and that was for the first year of Laravel's life. And I think also kind of setting the tone for the whole thing, where we didn't really jump on people if they ask, kind of a newbie question or whatever, or didn't know how things work. We didn't really jump on them or shame them or whatever, and everyone was kind of welcome, and it was all just kind of fun. And I mean, in some ways that tone is still continues in various ways. Like on the Lara chat on Slack, it's very kind of open and friendly, and pretty much everyone gets along and just has a good time. And so that makes people, want to be a part of the community, and it's, a nice resource to be able to tap into if you have a question or whatever.
Yeah, it's I found when I've wanted something answered, rather than going on forums and waiting an hour or a day or whatever to get an answer,
yeah,
I always get an answer straight away, and it's even more rewarding if I can give it, which is rare, but sometimes on occasion I can give an answer, and that feels great. And I see you out there too. I mean, there'll be you get out there and help people, and I think that support that sort of helps grow the trust, and all sort of adds up, I guess, which is sweet. I really like that. So, what I wanted to ask you now, back in Washington, D.C., you're asked a question, I believe, about the sucky parts of web development, the things that are mundane, the things that you don't want to do. And I remember very clearly, although I've forgotten it now I'm on stage, you talked about deployment and web server admin, and of course an asset pipeline. Personally, I believe Gulp sort of sorted the asset pipeline, but is there anything you see that still sucks, that needs to be, that you don't know how to work with? Could it be Workbench? Could it be something like that that you think is improving?
Well, definitely the Workbench thing, like you mentioned. Even we have, we had a Workbench in Laravel 4, but I kind of wanted it to be a more generic PHP solution going forward, to where it's not, you don't need a framework instance to build a package, so that you can just be anywhere on your system and say Workbench new whatever and start a package, so that it worked a little bit more on Laravel Envoy or LifeRaft or something like that, where it's a standalone tool that is separate from the framework. But I kind of want to see that solved more on a PHP level, where that's not really a Laravel problem. All of PHP, in my opinion, kind of have this issue of, it's just a pain in the butt to get started writing these packages, because you need several files, like your PHP unit file, your Travis file, your basic folder structure, your composer file, and all that stuff needs to be set up, and it's just kind of a pain to go through all that manually every time you want to experiment with a new package. So that could definitely be improved.
Even as much as you know, the various different testing tools, and there seems to be a new one each week pop up. And what's the cool one that people are using? Keeping up with all of that is hard. And you leave a package
Yeah.
for 3 months, and all of a sudden, you know, you're using PHP unit when everyone seems to be, you know, in love with PHP spec. You know, just things like
Right.
that. They're very fluid. So something like that automated that would be sick. So my last question: is there a Laracon this year?
There is a Laracon this year, and you know, of course, we're planning Laracon US, and Sean and his team are in the midst of planning Laracon EU. Laracon US, we have the venue and we have dates set up in August, and it's going to be kind of further down south and kind of more central in the U.S. and Kentucky. But basically, we should have the website up here in a couple weeks, where it will have like all the real details in terms of venue address and time and date, and the first speakers. I think we have 4 speakers confirmed so far, and those will go up with the website. But and of course we'll be adding more as we get closer to the event. So definitely there will be a Laracon. I'm actually really excited about this year's Laracon because the venue, I think, is going to be, on the U.S. side, it's going to be the nicest venue we've had by far, and should be a really nice event.
Yeah, it seems like a long way away from when you're in Australia, but when you start to plan down the details, it's not so bad. And the networking opportunities and the experience is good. So, mate, that's all I have to ask, but I'm going to throw it off to the audience to, I'm assuming some other people have got some questions, unless I've hogged all of their questions. So, yeah, thanks for your time, mate. And I'll throw it to the audience, and I'll just come up at the end to finish up, and we'll give it a wrap, but I'll let you get to bed very soon. Anyone got some questions that they'd like to pop to Taylor? Open mic, mate. Jump up. So we'll just wait till they're up at the mic, because we are recording this, just so if anyone's watching, they can see, they can hear it as well.
I think it must be about the same height as Taylor.
Yeah, you're about the same.
You 6'4", Taylor? You there?
It's fine.
Awkward.
That's a situation. Just in that one, yeah. He's about what you are. Can someone take a photo of that? That's a really good shot of Taylor there. Oh, he's back, is he?
That's the NBN.
Here we go. You back, mate?
Can you hear us, Taylor?
Looks like he's looking at Zen framework or something.
I don't know, it's really breaking up on my end. I don't know if you can hear me.
You broke up really badly just there, but are you back now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. The first one was actually the height thing. Are you 6'4"?
What was the question?
Your height, 6'4". It's obviously.
Oh yeah, 6'4", yeah.
Cool. So I won't have to shout, so that we're talking on the same level.
Nice.
Firstly, being the BDFL that you are, if you were to be hit by a bus, who would you leave control of Laravel to in your will?
Jeffrey Wade.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's supposed to take it over.
Okay. Would it concern you then that every single thing would be coded to an interface and nothing would be a concurrent implementation?
It wouldn't concern me, but I don't know if it would concern y'all. I'd be, obviously dead and gone.
Thanks for your caring, mate. That's amazing. And then the second one was the creator of Rails, David Heinemann. I can't remember his last name. If you were to err on one side of the testability argument, whether that be Jeffrey Way's or David's, which one would you be hedging more towards?
Well, I mean, in my own practice, I usually don't do 100% test coverage. Like in an app I've been working on, I tested. I actually did quite a bit more like end-to-end tests this time, and then mixed in with a few unit tests, just because it was, I don't know, it felt a little bit better to actually test it in a more real way rather than getting so granular on every single test. I did a little bit more big picture stuff, so I mean, I kind of I see where DHH is coming from in that whole argument, and I think definitely there is a thing as such a thing as over testing an application, or you can test things to such like a granularity where you don't really ever test that anything really works in unison, and the whole system can be broken, but all your unit tests are passing. So.
Yeah, I think more my point was just trying to make because I understand a lot of people do get into that sort of mindset of watching all of the Laracast videos, and obviously Jeffrey Way is he's quite passionate about what he does, but unfortunately it seems sometimes if you don't sort of watch everything that he does holistically that he's very, very hell-bent on getting 100% unit test coverage, which I don't think he necessarily is. I see that he's a fan of the DHH stuff, or at least the idea of what DHH was doing as well. And
Yeah.
these guys not feel like complete pieces of shit for not doing a lot of unit testing, because I think developers, because we're not generally very social, we kind of sit there and feel bad that we're not doing what Jeffrey Way's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hate writing unit tests. I mean, it's totally boring.
Yeah, I agree. And just one last opinion. Do you believe that Phil Sturgeon's Twitter account should be disabled once he starts drinking? Which would, of course, leave him with about 45 minutes worth of Twitter access a day.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it probably should be disabled. I don't know. I can't decide. I mean, on one hand, it's like, I don't know. You don't want to look, but like you do look, and you want to keep watching. But on the other hand, it would probably be better if it was disabled. That probably goes for anyone though, if they start drinking.
It doesn't matter. He'll be over in the Go and Ruby camps soon anyway. So it'll be
Yeah, I will say it could be worse. I mean, for someone drinking, they could say worse things than he does probably.
Very true. Thanks very much for your time, Tyler. I appreciate it.
All right, see ya.
Awesome, good stuff. Yeah, I'll say for what it's worth, we almost had Jeff Way on tonight, so I bugged him, Taylor.
Yeah, he was at my house.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said, Taylor told me you're over for dinner and you have to come online. He told me that he forced you to. He bailed. He did promise me next meetup we would have an interview with Jeff Way, so we'll come back to that. Anyone else got some questions? Just run up and tackle me off stage and go for gold. I guess worth introducing yourself just for the for YouTube that we're filming on.
Hey Taylor, I'm Bobby.
Hello.
All right. Just a couple of questions. One's on the workbench. Obviously, you've already taken that out of Laravel 5. And you're looking at that as an independent module. Is that going to be just the way of making packages going forwards? And when are you looking at doing that?
Yeah, I think it will be the way people make packages going forward. Like, I'd like to see kind of more convenient tools around all of that stuff to where it's easier to build your package within an application without a lot of headache. And I know people are already working like on workbench ideas and prototypes that they want to show me in the Laravel chat and stuff like that. So I'm kind of interested to see what they come up with, and then also to kind of tinker around on my own a little bit and see what I can come up with in terms of what would be a good way to write packages with an independent tool.
So will you release Laravel 5 without a package plugin manager?
Yeah, I mean, Laravel 5 could be released before like a workbench replacement is totally finished. But of course, all the Laravel package stuff. I'm actually still working a little bit on the Laravel 5 actually like package integration to where how you publish assets or publish stuff like that, like your views or language files and stuff like that, because it needs to be tweaked a little bit, and I'm still trying to find like the best way to do that. And that's kind of what I've been working on. I worked on a little bit tonight in the past few days, is kind of cleaning up some of that stuff. But yeah, Laravel 5 could be released before a workbench is finished.
Okay, cool. You said that you started off on CodeIgniter, but Laravel is heavily based on Symfony. So why the switch over towards Symfony packages?
When we were writing all our own stuff, it was a little bit of a pain to have to worry about all those kind of low-level details that Symfony worries about. So when we adopted for example, the HTTP Foundation, that took a huge weight off of my shoulders to have to manage all various edge cases and stuff that comes along with HTTP and PHP and all that. So if we can farm that out to Symfony and it's well tested and it's used by thousands of people, then we know we have a good foundation to build on, and we can kind of do really kind of the more fun stuff like Eloquent and Qs and Blade and all that stuff.
What are you going to do when they stop making Symfony packages because everyone uses Laravel?
I don't know. That's kind of a yeah. I've actually thought about that. Like, I need Laravel to. I kind of need Symfony to keep going, but also, you know, if that happens, I guess we'll have to go back to doing it ourselves.
Okay, cool. Cheers, Taylor.
All right, see ya.
I think we'll have time for maybe 2, 3, 4 more people. Yeah, jump up, straight up. Awesome. Just introduce yourself and go.
So my name's Tammy. I'm from Chili Dean Marketing. I'm probably a bit different to the rest of the guys here. I'm a bit more on a consumer side of the fence. So obviously it is great to meet the person that's actually created this. So in our marketing company, we are creating projects and actually outsourcing to developers who are building our projects in Laravel PHP. Now, as the owner of the brand, for you to protect that, as a consumer, how do I know when I'm getting, I suppose, a good quality product, or how do I know what I'm getting is the best version or the best coding with Laravel?
So we've actually been thinking about that, and I haven't talked about it publicly really, but me and a guy named Sean McCool have been kind of talking back and forth about a kind of certification process for Laravel, and this is something a lot of people have asked for, so that we can have like an actual thorough certification for the framework that demonstrates that this person knows the best practices, so to speak, of building a Laravel application. And there's actually a lot of work that goes into putting that certification together, and there's actually companies that have like thousands of testing centers all around the world, and Symfony does basically the same thing, where they have Symfony certification, and you can actually test, like for example, there's a testing center even just like 20 minutes from my house, which is pretty rare in Arkansas. So that is something we're kind of exploring as a way to kind of give people more, I don't know what the word, I guess proof is a word that they know what they're doing with Laravel, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely, especially from you know, a non-developer point of view as well. It'd be good to have that, I suppose, that reassurance as well.
Yeah.
And on that note, is there any way that we can find a contact? Say we've got a project and there's certain elements of the project we're not happy about. Is there a way we can find someone to sort of look over it to give us that feedback, whether we've got something genuine or if we've got something quality?
Yeah, we don't have like an official way to do that, I guess. Like, we don't have a team of people ourselves that do that kind of thing. So I guess right now you'd kind of have to, I don't know how you would find like the person you trust, whether it be like someone that seems to have a following or you know, makes Laravel tutorials or blogs or something that actually is pretty involved with the framework, but there's no really official way to do that right now. Okay,
fair enough. Is it worth maybe popping onto forums or just networking that way to see if I can find someone?
Yeah, that is pretty useful. Of course, the Laravel forums, and then also even, like, for example, even if you wanted like more of a paid thing where you're going to pay someone to look at this, even for just like a few days, you know, there's also Lara jobs which you can post and add to, and a lot of developers look at that. That's just larajobs.com, and then of course the forums are free to post on as well.
Okay, perfect. And just something you mentioned before, you were talking about Laravel being built in small applications and a very large application, because I'm just obviously trying to measure the time that, you know, our developers spent on our project with what they've done. What's an example of a large project that you guys have done in Laravel?
So, I mean, there are Laravel projects that are hundreds of thousands of lines of code, and those are a lot of times like bigger, much bigger corporations. Like, there are companies that have built stuff for, you know, TV networks like NBC and Fox Sports and things like that, which are much bigger. The applications I write tend to be more like maybe 20,000 lines of code, and so for some people, you know, that's big, and some people that's very small, just depending on what kind of project you're used to. But that's kind of my experience with it.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? I was going to say, not that interesting, Taylor, but we have one more for you, I think. Awesome.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I'm Zach. I just have a question about we have more of a the way we use Laravel is more API centric. We don't use Blade at all. I was wondering, we've found that Laravel has been the best framework so far at doing API work. I was wondering if there's any intention to move more towards supporting the RESTful API movement, I guess you can call it.
Yeah, I always like. I mean, I build those kinds of applications too a lot, where I have mainly like an Angular front end and a Laravel API on the back end, and so I'm always looking. Or I myself am always, looking for ways to make that more convenient, and either whether that's with Eloquent or with the routing system itself or whatever. So yeah, I mean, if there's anything that caters towards making API development easier, I'm definitely interested, either through, a pull request, or you can ping me on any of the chat systems or whatever. So yeah, that's definitely something I'm interested in, because it seems like that's the way a lot of apps are going, right? Either people build backends for mobile apps in Laravel, or just really JavaScript heavy apps where, views are becoming more and more, kind of irrelevant, and it's more about APIs and JSON and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely the direction we're moving in. I'd like to see. I'm an Angular dev myself, working with that backend team, and it's good to be able to work with those guys in the sense that it works well with APIs. The things that I'd like to see later would be things like WebSockets, because we're starting to look into Node and see that Node does WebSockets beautifully. So that would be a nice future addition. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Well, you've done all that C stuff, so you can write some PHP extensions that do all those things which you see. I actually remember at a last year in New York, Fabian Potencia talked about how he wanted to change PHP into not only just a one request, loads of everything, does everything, and into sort of like a concurrent, living thing as some other systems are, like a Java sort of system. So that would be kind of interesting. So Taylor, build that. Please. Guys, anything else, or should we let the poor guy go to bed, because it's about 20 past 2. Yes? Yes?
If he wasn't allowed to again, what language would he be excited to work with next?
No worries. So the question was, if you weren't allowed to touch PHP again, it disintegrated, what would you use? What's your second preference?
I would probably go back to .NET. That's the easy answer, because that's something I already know, and it's a pretty robust language. If I had to pick something else besides that, even, gosh, I guess I would probably do either Ruby or Python, something like that, or maybe even just JavaScript. I don't know, but I don't know. The JavaScript stuff just moves so fast. Like they move even faster than Laravel, it seems like.
Yeah. I've found with Node, that's what scares me off. I found it quite interesting and intriguing, but every week if I open it up, it's completely changed. Guys, anything else? Shout some questions, I'll ask them, otherwise we will let him go.
Are we looking for a massive redesign change at the site before the end of the month?
Of the Laravel site?
Yeah, with Laravel 5 coming out.
Sure, so the question was, with Laravel 5 imminent, if you had a date, I'm not sure, you may let us know, or you've got a sort of rough ballpark, but the marketing, the site, that sort of thing, are you going to be revamping that, or are you sticking with Scott's design?
No, it's revamped. Every release gets a revamped website. It's definitely revamped. I've actually got it. I've got it here locally, but yeah, it'll be a fresh facelift for the website.
Times New Roman.
Yep. Comic Sans.
Nice. Comic Sans is the header, and Times New Roman is that suits me.
Yeah.
Of course, about size 40. Anybody else want to speak? Speak now, forever hold your peace. Otherwise, it's gone. Anyone? No? All right. Taylor Otwell, I immensely appreciate you stopping by or waking up at least. We had many
Yeah.
conversations in the last couple of days regarding your wake up at 1:15. It's been awesome.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of people here who appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Aside from that,
When
mate.
my alarm went off, I was actually confused. I couldn't remember why I was getting up at 1:15. It took my brain a second to figure out that I was supposed to come in here and talk with you.
No, we appreciate it, mate. And then we'll call you in about 3 weeks, and you can do it all again. No, I'm joking, mate. I appreciate it, and yeah, all the best, mate, and thank you.
All right, see ya.